what is the difference between karma and dharma? Karma is operating from that space of lack, operating from fear, from survival mode, from being defensive, being insecure. That's when we're being triggered. You know, they say when you get an email that at work that you, don't like, you want to write something back, don't press send. Have you heard that? They always say, just save it in your drafts. If your friend sends you a confrontational message that triggers you, write her a reply or him a reply and just save it. Don't press send. That's the reasons, because we're not reactive. When you're reactive, you're operating from your lower self. The lower self is primed to just keep you safe, to keep you in survival. It's there to just, it thrives off insecurity. It has a field day when you start doubting yourself. It just takes you on this whole rabbit hole because it loves it, because it wants to keep you safe. It wants to keep you small. And so when you try to control situations, when you avoid them, that's all operating from karma. Dharma, on the other hand, is you operating from your whole self, your authentic self, your true self. So the transition has to happen to go from lower self to higher self so that you can react differently. And the more and more you practice that, the more it becomes your default. So you'll receive a message that's confrontational. You'll look at it and be like, oh, okay, interesting. All right, I'll respond later. You don't need to respond there and then. And when you do, your response will be measured, calm and rational compared to if you were to respond from your lower self. But all of this can only take place once you've done the healing. That's why healing is so, so important. Because unless you heal those wounds, you're not going to know. They're going to just keep reoccurring. You probably assume that I'm very confident. I speak on stages. I am planning to be a TED speaker. I've been a dance performer most of my life. I've danced on very big stages in front of audiences. But one thing you may not be able to believe about me is that one of my soul lessons is low self-worth. That's one of the things I'm working on. And I always doubt myself. I question myself. I have that imposter syndrome is so much in my head. It's always making me doubt myself. Sometimes I watch these videos back and I'm like, oh no, Nikita, I cringe at myself. I'm like, you said this wrong. You didn't say that. The way you said that, the example you gave, I really pull myself apart. It's one of my soul lessons. And a few days ago, I was speaking at an International Women's Day event. And normally I'm fine speaking, especially if I'm early on in the day, I quite enjoy it. But in this case, they put me on towards the end of the day. And so I had to listen to all the other speakers. And so what happened with my low self-worth? My lower self was having a field day. It was loving it because it was like, look, see, you're not meant to be here. Look at that woman. She's so much better than you. Her story's, well, much more inspiring than yours. What are you going to do? Just read a few poems. My lower self was going crazy to the point where I was having a physiological response. I got to a point where I felt like I couldn't even breathe. I had to ask the organizer to go out for air, and I had to really compose myself and come back in. And so you wouldn't believe that that's something that I struggle with. And I'm sharing it with you because it's a theme, it's a soul lesson. So I'm only able to do as much as I do today because I've been working on it for so long. I hope to completely heal it in this lifetime. I've even had hypnosis for it as well. So there are many healing modalities you can use. Reiki is one of them. Hypnosis is another. Pranic healing is another. Theta healing is another. There's so many healing methods. They all work. All of the modalities work. It's just whichever one you're drawn to and whichever one just gets to the root cause. I've even done a medicine ceremony, a shamanic medicine ceremony. And that was crazy. Like that was when you're ingesting this like tobacco stuff and it just gives you this crazy response in your body, and I felt like I was just seeing white light. It was an amazing experience. It was surreal. But the point of doing that is to take you to a new level of consciousness, to be able to transcend the fear, the doubt, etc. So there are so many different modalities you can use. There's no right or wrong. It's just whichever one resonates with you. So we're going to be doing archetypes, Dharma archetypes. So an archetype is basically it's a way that your soul came into the world with its own blueprint. So it's like a unique personality. So you've heard of personality types, but personality is more for the physical. This is actually on a soul level. So you were born like this. Everyone is born into one of these 5 archetypes. This comes from the Vedas, and the Vedas are the oldest scriptures in the world. Even, I mean, it's in Sanskrit, which is even older than Latin. So it's thousands of years old. It's not about boxing yourself into a label. It's about recognizing that there are certain tendencies, and this is going to help you to figure out what your purpose is. So your purpose is not a job title. Your Dharma is not like, okay, I've figured it out, I'm going to be doing this. No, it's not that. It's your uniqueness that you bring to the table. So when the soul is in true alignment, you just go with that person, you resonate with them. Why we don't resonate with other people is because they're being controlled by the programmed mind, the conditioning. So when you release all the conditioning, that's when you come back to the real you. And who is the real you? It's one of these archetypes. We all have a primary and a secondary. So an educator, that doesn't necessarily mean teacher. So an educator doesn't have to be teacher, but it's someone that just instinctively shares knowledge. They share stories. You know, if you've got people in your relatives, like an uncle, for example, who's always telling stories, they're educators. They just like other people to learn about things. It could be about something in the news, about politics. It could be a subject. They just like empowering other people with wisdom. So that's what an educator does. But sometimes each of these archetypes have 2 sides to them, lower self and higher self. So when they're in their higher self, they're sharing knowledge and wisdom. But when they're in their lower self, they are feeling unappreciated and as though they're misunderstood, as though their insights are not being well received. The laborer is someone who's very hardworking. They always want to work. They're always looking for things to do. They're always the ones that are doing the housework. They are really hardworking at work. Like everything they do is about being in service of others. So they're the majority of our population, are laborers, and they're the ones that build community and they create stability. So their main goal in life is to work hard and do well, like just, you know, pay their taxes. They're honest citizens. They're people that just want to create a lovely home for their family, pay their mortgage and be happy. That's it. The merchant is the most charismatic out of all of the archetypes. They're funny, they're expressive, you know, they're the life and soul of the party. Do you have anyone in your family, your relatives? They just walk into a room and you just know they're there. They're well dressed, they're well put together. The type of men that gel their hair, they wear really trendy shirts. The women that are really well dressed, really well presented, they love to be the center of attention. They make really good salespeople because they've just got the gift of the gab. They know how to communicate. They know how to connect people together. They're good networkers. They're good matchmakers because they can think, this person will be suited to that person. So it's great to have a merchant in your life. And actually the world we're living in right now, in this current age, is a merchant world. So merchants are the most highly paid. Donald Trump is a merchant, for example. They are the ones that are going to go far in life. Educators, people find them boring. People don't want to sit and listen to wisdom. They want to be entertained because that's the kind of world we're living in. The shadow side of the merchant is that they have a lot of feeling, they feel too much. So sometimes they go into a tendency of people pleasing, and they're a bit wishy-washy. That's the shadow side. I didn't talk about the shadow side of the labourer. They can be overworking. They don't know when to stop, and they can get burnt out. The warrior. The warrior is a strong, passionate, and purpose-driven person. They're someone that feels alive when they're fighting for a cause. So when a warrior is in their higher self, they're supporting something that's meaningful: domestic abuse, social housing, climate change, something like that. Whereas if they're in their shadow self, they are basically rebels. So they're causing trouble, a lot of criminals, people that just get on the wrong side of the law. They're warriors. And the reason for that is because they've got all this built up energy in them to fight, but it's not being channeled in the right way. So if a warrior's in their higher self, they can do a lot of good in the world. They can work in law, in politics, they can make a lot of change. But if they're in their shadow self, they can make a lot of trouble. And then the outsider is the last one. And I know it's a negative word, but actually the outsider is quite a fun one, because that's a versatile archetype. They can be any of them. So if you were listening to all of this and thinking, actually, I'm a little bit of everything, might be that you're an outsider, because outsiders can pick and choose. They can chop and change. The unique gift of an outsider is that they have this ability to see beyond. They're able to see what other people can't see. They have a unique way of doing things. So an outsider in their higher self is someone innovative, someone different. They have a unique vision. Steve Jobs, for example, was an outsider. He had a vision of bringing something that had never been done before, aesthetics with technology. But in their lower self, in their shadow, the outsider feels like they don't belong. They feel lonely. They feel disconnected from other people. They feel like they're always being left out. So again, each one of these archetypes has a higher self and a lower self. So depending on which way it's being channeled. As I said, we all have a dominant one that's known as our primary archetype. And then we have a secondary one. The reason we have two is because we lead with the primary and the secondary just comes into it. So when you know your archetype, that's how you be authentic.